We are streaming and we are online.
Okay. We will reconvene to open session at 6:23. The board did meet in closed session, however, we did not complete all the agendized business. We will reconvene to closed session after open session. Public adjournment will occur after that. We will move to item 8.02, action on student disciplinary cases. Can we have a motion to approve disciplinary case number 3 as recommended? And we'll do them together. And disciplinary case number 5 as amended. It is, the board would like to amend the recommendation for case number 5. It is recommended the student be expelled from all schools in the district through December 17th, 2021. It is further recommended that the expulsion order be suspended and the student enroll at Yosemite High School. So can we have a motion to approve those 2 cases, please?
So moved, as amended.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. And we'll call for the vote, Mrs. Rohrbach.
Yeah, I have a question. Can you just clarify what we just, what we're voting on, just to make sure? I know we talked about this, so, but.
We're voting on the 2 disciplinary cases, case number 3 as recommended, case number 5 as amended.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mrs. Rohrbach, I don't have the scoreboard up. Okay. Okay, thank you. Motion passes 4-0. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
We'll call for the vote, please. Thank you. Motion passes 4-0. First action item, approval of local control accountability plan. Dr. Aguilar.
Thank you, President Pickle. We have made some adjustments to our local control accountability plan. The adjustments to the plan are highlighted in purple. I'm not going to go through every single page, but did want to highlight the language that is found in most, if not all, the updates. The measures listed below facilitate the monitoring and tracking of student performance at the high school level and allow the district to provide the necessary support to students across all district groups, with an emphasis on improving educational outcomes for African American and Hispanic students, English learners, homeless/foster youth, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and students with disabilities. That language has been added to the goals 2 and 3 of our Lcap. Also on pages 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 of the Lcap, under desired outcome for 2023-24, there has been additional language that has been added that is highlighted in purple that reads, with an emphasis on improving educational outcomes for African American and Hispanic students, English learners, homeless/foster youth, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and students with disabilities. Those are the adjustments that have been made from the previous Lcap. The superintendent recommends adoption of the local control accountability plan for the 2021-2022 school year.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, and I've got some questions.
Further discussion?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
So Dr. Aguilar, starting with like page 10, when we start to talk about the goals, you know, is there a way that we can add at least, you know, on the left side of the metric, some of our undue populations? I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of I mean, what are we gonna measure for them? Because the Lcap is designated, for them, that funding portion of it. So then how do we know that along the way, whatever our baseline is, that we're seeing progress on those percentages?
So are you asking to add language?
I mean, I don't know, I'm sure once the county meets with you guys to go over the, the Lcap, I'm not sure if they'll point that out or not, but I'm just thinking in terms of, like, as a trustee, I don't know what that means as far as college and career for my ELs, Are they 30% right now, and we're looking to be 70%, after 3 years? Are they 70% now, and what's that number gonna be at the end of the 30 or the LCAP? And I guess I could say the same for all areas of those metrics, because I see, like, on page 11, so we're talking about ELA scores and math scores, but then on page 13 and 14, we're talking about CAS data. So is that similar data then that we're looking at? Because I know one's dashboard. What's the other data then?
So the other data that we're looking at are the curriculum that we just adopted with Carnegie Learning Math. So the data that we'll be looking at for math will be those internal assessments that we'll have district-wide.
Gotcha.
That will be universal. The second piece of this will be the reading inventory that we will be doing, which will measure lifestyle levels for students for English. And those are both programs that we don't currently have, but we will have this upcoming year. So as we look at next year's data and the different outcomes, we will be reporting on that data and including that here in LCAP.
So that'll be baseline data for next year.
Correct.
Is what you're saying. Okay.
Correct.
So then in terms of that then, so then those assessments come with those programs. So is the expectation from the ed department going to be that every high school within Merced Union is going to give the same assessment across the board to every kid, so that we have true data?
That is correct.
Okay, and that's something that we need to go to teachers. I mean, 'cause I know that we've been working on aligning some sort of benchmark across the district. So is that going to be the expectation then?
That is going to be the expectation for every campus. And what's really exciting about using Carnegie Learning Math is that, we're going to have all of these systems work together. And this is going to be something that's going to be very tight. So again, these are all common benchmarks, common assessments that will be given across the district. The teachers will be a part of putting together this school year.
And maybe I wasn't clear on the dashboard data and then the CAS data, because as we're talking about 12.8 points below standard, and we obviously want to increase on that so that it's closer to standard. So that data on that page and the data on page 13, is that different data then? Because it's CAS data, right?
Yeah. So we have different data that we'll be looking at. So we'll be looking at the CAS data, and then we'll also be looking at the internal data that we'll have for math.
No, I get that, but it is 12.8 points below standard. You see that's our baseline, correct?
Correct.
So, but that's CAS data, correct?
Correct.
So, so what's the difference between that and page 13 then?
So the students meeting grade level standards on page 11, and the baseline data on the CAS for ELA scores on page 13.
Right.
So you're asking if those two are the same?
Yes.
So that data, I'm not sure. I'd have to.
I'm just asking. So yeah, just follow up on that one, please.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to follow up with you on that to be 100% certain.
And then on page 17, and I know I asked this last week. So if we're looking at 2019 through 2020 data for the percentage of students suspended, okay, 0.1%. What does that equal to in 2019-20? Because we did about 7 to 8 months of schooling that year. So we're saying only 0.1% of our student population was suspended for 19-20?
Correct.
Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, this is data. I mean, we weren't in school.
Well, no, but 19-20 we were though, through for 8 months.
For most of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just asking, is that number correct? That's 0.1% is what?
Yeah. So that I don't know the actual number
Okay.
of students, if that's what you're asking, But I mean, these are the queries that we ran out of our areas database with regard to, the suspensions.
And then the point 23 following up then, so we expelled more kids that year than we suspended kids that year.
Correct.
Something there doesn't, I mean, in my opinion, doesn't.
Yeah, that
add up
doesn't
right.
jive, that's gotta be.
So something's wrong
That's
there.
right.
We expelled more kids than we suspended.
Yeah. So I'd have to go back and take a look
Okay,
at some of that data, but this is data that we queried out of our areas database that we have up on our Lcap dashboard.
and I know that we've talked about cleaning some of that up, with the queries and stuff, but, I mean, that stood out. Also, on the fit tool on page 18, 55% or better. I mean, I know that was a Williams thing. We should be striving for something above 75 to be in the fair range. So that obviously, for questions for me, then our facilities they're already up to par then. I mean, they're 55% getting a rating. That means that somewhere along the line, 45% of stuff's not meeting even, I don't know, usable or even good enough to be used or whatever that may be.
Ralph, you wanna comment on that?
He's not here.
Yeah.
Mr. Calderon? Are you there?
Who does the fit for us? I'm sure we do it internally.
The custodians do.
The head custodian,
Okay.
along with the administrator who's going to do this art,
Okay.
do the bid at each campus at the beginning of each year.
So Ralph, obviously with the 55%, that's our baseline, to progress forward from, so obviously are there like major things out on our campuses that are on a list that we need to correct like soon? I mean, because like I said, that's a low number.
Not at all. I don't believe, again, I'd have to look at the specific information and I will get back to you.
Okay.
So we have a motion on the table, and we need to approve the LCAP. So if we approve it, and it does need to be amended based on those percentages, can we then bring it back with amendments later?
Well, the county will go through it anyway.
Yeah, the county's going to
Okay.
go
Yeah.
through with a fine tooth comb, and anything that we find before they find, we will give them that information and make sure that they find it.
Okay.
And lastly, Dr. Aguilar, on page 25, when we look at credential staff and the appropriateness of assignments, is there a reason why we're using 2018-19 data and not 2021 data as our baselines?
And you're on page 25,
25, yeah.
and you're looking
The
at.
first two boxes there.
Yeah, I do not know why we
Okay.
used 2018, 2019 data.
Okay, just checking.
And then we also need to approve local indicators too, don't we? In conjunction with the LCAP?
Use or approve?
Yeah, the local, did you guys do that? Dr.
Local
Aguilar?
indicators.
The local indicators, the self-survey?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
The local indicators that are uploaded to the dashboard that used to be brought before the board in November for the December upload, now have to be approved with the LCAP. Okay.
Well, question on the credentialed staff on page 25. Even though it's 2018-19, is that accurate? Is that number accurate? Because it seemed like we approved a lot of staff who was out of credentials for the subject they were teaching.
So when you approve them and give them a board authorization, sorry, I jumped in. When you approve them and give them a board authorization, that meets the requirement for being correctly assigned.
It's correct, yes, okay. I'm just reading it. It's saying highly qualified teachers. Okay, I think that sometimes we do, we choose to not re-elect some teachers that may be highly qualified and put others that are starting or not highly qualified. That's why I'm asking that, because it seems like it's high. And so the question was, is that accurate? It's accurate because we voted on that. Is that correct, Ms. Ballinger?
Yeah, when teachers, there are certain ways they can qualify for a board authorization. Not everybody qualifies for a board authorization, but when they do and you vote on them, it does make them correctly assigned.
So back to Tiffany's question about the local indicators then. I'm not sure who does the survey. I mean, it's a self-survey by the district and I guess our ed service or cabinet department. So that needs to be brought back to us to approve it. And I think it was supposed to be done either last week as a consent agenda item, even this week as part of our LCAP process.
Prior to July 1st, we might want to check to see if what we need to do to approve those,
Just to
make sure we're in compliance with whatever the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to follow up,
Okay.
you know, with regard to that requirement.
Okay, it's just a reporting out,
Yeah.
it's not, it's just, I think more of a, this is what we're gonna report
Will
on
do.
dashboard, so, okay.
I have a few
Okay.
questions too, if that's okay. On page 10, the metric is percentage of pupils prepared on the college and career indicator, and how are we determining their preparedness?
Mhm. Yeah, so we take a look at all of the different criteria for the college and career indicator, which is students taking a dual enrolled class, passing an AP exam, the syllabi literacy, students completing A through G, students completing a CTE pathway. Those are all indicators that are given to us by the state. So that's the measurement that we use.
Okay, so that's assumed in here. What about things like, can we include the number of CTE certifications students graduate with, the number of students going on to a 2-year college or a 4-year college, or those? I mean, we're saying we're college and career ready, but we're not including anything that shows that they actually went on and did either of those things. You know what you catch my drift?
Well, that's
Where
in
are
the
we tracking?
That's in the college and career indicator. That's all part of the data that's reported to the state.
Okay.
But you're right, it could be more specific to, like, you know, how many students graduated with an AA, how many students did graduate with college credit.
So
I would love to know that. We get questions about it. Well, how many kids actually are going to 4-year schools? And how many kids actually are going to the community college? And, you know, this, like you said, you know, kids that are graduating high school and community college at the same time.
yeah, I will tell you that data is we can get, it's old, but it's really reliant also on, you know, us being able to get, you know, a lot of that information from the students.
Okay.
And it's typically a year or two old, so it's not something that it's,
Well, this is 2 years old.
yeah.
Yeah, there's not a choice on the data, it's just uploaded from 17 through 20, that was the last LCAP, and it's not like we have a choice to put better data in.
Okay.
This is what it is.
I mean, you can splice out all of the, you know, the college and career indicator. I mean, there are 6 different indicators, but it's all accumulated into one, and we're given that percentage. It might be better suited to report out on all of the different measurements, you know, throughout the year, if that's information that you would like.
Yeah, and all the data is a little off this year anyway, because we're lacking a lot of it from this year.
I also wondered if we've got students engaged in curricular and extracurricular activities, and you've got a baseline measurement for extracurricular, but is there anything that we're doing to promote that more?
I can take that one. you would like. As part of the ELO plan that we adopted, I forget when it was, back in May, part of the uses for those funds are after school and Saturday school and outside of the regular school day activities. So one of the things that sites will have to do at the beginning of next year is run data on credits and grades, but then at the end of the first quarter, student involvement in other types of activities, such as being a member of FFA, being a member of band, being a member of athletics, being in a club that reports regularly. And then using that data, they have to reach out to students who are not involved and then design their after-school and Saturday programs to use those funds to try to track those kids into more activities.
Well, I think that should be in here, because if we didn't have ELO money, we'd have to find that some way, somehow to make it work. It fits right into our Lcap. Perfect. $27 million that we're going to use to, hey, you know what? These 4 on and extracurricular activities, let's find some of their interest and let's see how we can reel them in.
So that probably could be added for the year 2, since ELO is going to pay for it for year
Right.
1. We could be adding that in
Yeah.
year 2 for the Lcap when we do the update.
And Dr. Aguilar, just back to my point on the metrics, I just think that in terms of this $27 million that we're receiving, for our undupes, that at the minimum that we should call out those specific 3 subgroups, and then maybe add our African-American kids also as part of that metric so that we can see what their progress is along the way, whether it's, academic-wise or suspension or expulsions or involved in extracurricular activities. So we see that all of our, at least those major 3 subgroups that we're getting funded for are, that the Lcap is serving its purpose. And it's driving them and they're coming to school and they're learning and they're progressing and everything else. But then we start to add, the additional subgroups, because I know that Merced Black School Parallel Board, they've been their voice, for our African-American kids, that they want to see them progress, that they want to see them not be suspended. They want to see these things happen. So then how are we going to measure that? I think waiting a whole year is, too late, that we should be monitoring that, I guess, quarterly or if not sooner, so that we can catch them before they fall off at the tail end. And then, 3 years from now, we're going to have the discussion again, hey, why are these numbers still the way that they are? And then what's the plan moving forward?
And again, part of this new 3-year plan, is for us to, look at the metric for college and career indicator. And as we added with an emphasis on these, the different groups here, every year you can add a layer to this Lcap, right? So we can arbitrarily grab numbers and put them in here, but they're not real numbers, right? So I think, again, the advantage of us going through a new cycle of a 3-year plan is for us to set, the initial general metric or measurement, and we can adjust it as we go throughout. Now, as far as measuring, we're constantly measuring, all of these groups. So we don't wait until the Lcap just to, to react, to any of the data. So those are intrinsic and those are evaluated throughout the year. We don't wait for the Lcap. Now, what we do is we evaluate it. We have these discussions with our community groups to see what we need to add. But what we, as a district, we don't wait until the Lcap to make adjustments.
One more, and then if you guys have questions. I'm sorry, Julio, on the counseling one, students will have a scheduled appointment with counselors. We started this dialogue, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, where we said counselors were going to meet with students at least, twice a year, and they were going to monitor and track and all this other stuff and then present to us. So that process, I'm assuming, is still there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then as far as, because I think on goal 3 or 4, it talks about counselors meeting with foster youth, and that's going to be a new metric. Well, in my opinion, it shouldn't be a new metric because they should know who those foster kids are and how many times they've met with them. So that should be our baseline, even a COVID or non-COVID year.
Yeah, it's not a new metric. It's an ongoing metric, and we redid the counselor guide for this upcoming year, and that is something that was discussed with all the principals in this upcoming year as one of those items that we needed to continue to work on and refine. And the social emotional learning is a big piece of that. Now, as we went through and we refined that counseling guide. There is still that expectation that counselors are meeting with all of our students, and they're picking up that social emotional learning piece. And it's been given to all the sites and the principals to implement for the fall of this upcoming school year. So it's not something that's new, it's an ongoing.
Because on page 22, it does call it out as a % of foster youth accessing counseling support as a new metric.
It says it's a new metric as well on page, just looking at it also, 13. Students will have regular appointments with counselors for academic and social emotional support, new metric.
Yeah, it is a new metric for this 3-year plan, you know, for us to move forward.
But we should have some of that data already, though. Well, what I'm saying is, so if I'm calling out just foster youth, let's say we have 200 foster youth in Mercer Union High School District.
Yep.
I should be able to go on Aries and send out a query, say, how many times did, I don't know, the counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez, meet with X amount of foster kids? Boom. 30 times she met with those 12 kids. Okay, there's my data. And so across the district, we should have just run a report. There's my metrics. That's what I'm going to use, and we're going to progress on that goal.
Yeah, we should. And,
Right.
you know, part of that new reorg, there's a whole section in there, and one of the emphasis is to make sure that all of our counselors are reporting, you know, this data, because it is very inconsistent, you know, throughout our district, which is, again, one of the reasons why we went back and revisited this counseling guide and also added the link with all the different codes to make sure that all the codes that need to be used are being used, because it's being done inconsistently across the district. So yeah, it sounds, you know, easy to say, oh yeah, I saw you as a counselor, but something that we need to do a much better job, you know, at doing and monitoring is the counselors are entering that data once they see the students.
And I know it's data, and I know we're talking numbers, but at the end of the day, that's what we're going to look at, you know, because we want to see what's happening within not only the aspects of the Lcap, but what's going on in Mercer Union High School District to address all students, you know. So what's that data telling us as trustees, you know, and then in terms of conversations with Mr. Peterson and cabinet, hey man, you know, our expulsion rates or suspension rates are still kind of high, especially for our African-American kids. What's going on? You know, because that's the dialogue that we're going to get. You know, what are you guys doing? And then we're going to get the pushback from the community saying you're still not addressing the issue. And here we are, you know, in the 3rd cycle of Lcap, and you have a chance to make everything, you know, from scratch, moving forward for these next 3 years to make real things happen for our community. You know what? Okay, let's call out those subgroups. Let's put those percentages out there. If it's not good news, you know what? It's a starting point. But at the end of these 3 years, then it's all going to be good news because we're doing all these things to make it work.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if it's not working, then that's our explanation. You know what? We tried this, and we're trying this, and we need to find different ways to make it work.
Yeah. So, and I think that was pointed out, you know, at the last meeting. Yeah. So you have, you know, Director Johnson, Torrin Johnson, and then also Christy Johnson that will be meeting with all of our student support service, you know, managers monthly. And that's the data that they will be looking at for expulsions, suspensions, for all campuses, for all students. So again, we don't wait to the Lcap to do something about it. They're going to be meeting with our student support associate principals every single month to make sure that students aren't being disproportionately suspended.
I mean, you understand, you can see that data almost in real time right now.
No, I understand, but I guess what I'm saying is that our community is now becoming more of a louder voice, which is a good thing, because they want to be more engaged in what's going on within the confines of not only the Lcap, but our district. And that's a good thing. So then I think we should be as transparent as possible, even if the data is not good data.
Of course.
Oh, well, that's what it is. You know what? 30% of those kids are African-American being suspended. Okay, let's fix the problem. What's the root cause of what's going on? Let's find solutions for it. We have the money. Let's do it.
Yeah, and again, the Lcap dashboard that we have internally is what we use, and that tool was created for that very reason that you just said, for the sake of being transparent. The suspension numbers, the data that was being questioned is in our Lcap, so I can go back and make sure, you know, that we pull up the query that we used, you know, for that data. But that's the data that we have up here and that we share. So this is us trying to be, the Merced Union High School District, making an attempt to be transparent. It has all groups, all suspension data, all the different metrics here with teachers being fully credentialed. That is all up on our website. I mean, so it is public. It's there for people to view. And you know, one of the things that I would encourage, you know, those that are in our audience tonight is we'll go back to having Lcap meetings on our sites again this fall. And again, that was an expectation that was given to all the sites here in the last 2 weeks, that they will be having 2 Lcap meetings in the fall, showcasing all of the actions and services that are in this Lcap. So if there is a question about suspension rates or data, I mean, that's part of the school sites showcasing that. Where are we, you know, right now currently with what's in Lcap? So that's the whole intent of the process that we have in place. In the spring, we evaluate it, right, to make the recommendations and to make, you know, any adjustments to this plan. So it is ongoing. It's not stagnant, and it's not something that we wait to do at the very end.
And some of that will be reported out in the indicators too, some of that information. So we'll see it.
Well, a lot of that too is, you know, Ms. Ham mentioned, you know, as far as the metrics in college and career, you know, we have our CAS data, you know, that we'll be reporting on. We have our AP data that, again, is here. All of that data is here in this dashboard, and that's where we, you know, that's where we showcase it. Now, if you'd like for me to be a little bit more transparent in the sense of reporting it at a board meeting, that's something, you know, I can most definitely do. If there's something that you'd like for me to report or make note of in the pulse, I can definitely do that as well. All the data that's on this dashboard is run at the end of every semester to make sure that it is, you know, accurate.
I'm not sure how the board feels, but, you know, for me, as we're launching a brand new 3-year Lcap, you know, and we've got a bunch of brand new things that we'll be launching this school year as far as assessments and, you know, counseling services for kids. Yeah, and, you know, and truly targeting, you know, what our concerns from not only from us, but also the public is, yeah, well, let's have those quarterly updates, you know, as to what's happening within the confines of this Lcap. What's our suspension rate? I understand the dashboard on our webpage, okay, but, you know, are we on pace to meet that target by the end of the first year? You know, okay, we're X percent first quarter, you know, or X percent of the kids are proficient in language arts. Okay, second quarter, X percent, we're progressing forward so that it's not a surprise, you know, at the end of the year. I'm saying for us, for me.
So we can ask Mr. Peters to maybe add that to the superintendent's report then, along with the other Lcap or superintendent's goals. Add that.
That would be great.
Okay.
Julio has some questions, and I actually have some also.
Okay.
So a lot of what, well, some of the questions I was going to ask, Richard asked already. So again, some of the questions I ask is I may know the answer already, but it's just so that the public can hear the answer as well. But regarding the wording on the new wording in purple, can we add, I know that we added with an emphasis on improving educational outcomes for the groups that we put in there, but can we add to it and others who are failing or whatever the right word is there, so that if somebody's falling behind, we help them too. Not, you know, of course, these groups are the ones that need the most help, but let's say there's just a regular kid who needs help and is falling behind. Can we add that to it? So, I mean, we know that we're helping everybody, not just the groups that have the highest rate of whatever the word may be there.
Dr. Aguilar, it does indicate all students, correct, with just an emphasis with some added verbiage.
Yeah, so the initial intent, the language that was initially written, is for all students.
Yeah, I know that. Sorry, I know that.
The change is to ensure that we're being transparent and we call out the different groups that are here: African American students, socioeconomically disadvantaged students with disabilities. But our focus is all students.
Right, but
It's
we're
a fair
asking,
question, though. I appreciate the question, Julio, because I think, you know, I just, we want to take care of every group. We want to pay attention. We want to be aware for groups that are struggling, but I don't think we want to, we don't want to isolate any student group. We care about everybody. And what I'm always really afraid of is you've got high achievers and low achievers, or, you know, maybe that's not a good way to describe that group, but those that really struggle. And then the middle, and I always feel like the middle doesn't get attention, right? The middle, there's the group of kids that might go to college if they got enough attention, but they're not a high achiever that's obviously going to go to college, and they're not part of one of these struggling groups, and do they get the attention that they deserve? So just making sure that we're paying attention to all of our students, always. I mean, is every student going to get a chance to meet with a counselor once a quarter? That's the goal.
That's the goal.
And then those who need more attention will get more attention. It's not, you know, which I think is very fair, but let's not forget or assume that, you know, because these kids are getting B's and C's, that they don't need our attention.
That's right. And I think we all struggled with this, to be honest, about how to, the proper verbiage to use. And there is no doubt that some of these groups struggled in more, and that's what we decided on. And maybe that'll change next year. Maybe one of these groups will go up and another group will have to be put in. But the focus is on all students, but, you know, we certainly have an emphasis in our eye on these groups over here.
And all that can be addressed in the reporting out.
so what I'm
data.
saying is,
So we can arrange that any way we deem important. Sorry, Julio.
all right, so what I'm saying is that not only what Aaron said, but also those who are emphasized on all these groups we said that because they need the help, but also a student who's failing, he's got or she's got FFS. Why is it? Let's get in there and find out what's going on, no matter what her or his race is, as well. So anyone who is failing, period. If we're going to emphasize on something, let's emphasize on all these groups plus those who are failing. So again,
And Julio, and just to add to that, on page 12, that is a metric on the bottom of page 12, the percentage of total pupils with one or more Fs. So, you know, it's going to address those specifically, but then obviously the emphasis on our subgroups that we get the funding for. But it is part of it is one of our metrics. So I think that kind of addresses that, and I'm hopeful that that we will just keep an eye on that
Yeah, I mean,
throughout
we
the year.
don't want that to be an additional service. That is, we serve all students in that capacity.
Well, I think if you look back at the different goals, so like on page 10, for example, if you look at goal number 1 in the description reads, all students will be college and career ready. So the goal already reads all, and what we're doing down below with the metrics is we're being intentional not to leave out groups, right? So the intent is, again, that we are serving all students, and I don't want to belabor this, but, you know, I like the question about the transparency. I like the question about, you know, the data, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because maybe this is the time to highlight the different data that we have up on this Lcap dashboard. And it's something that perhaps we need to bring to the forefront so people are paying attention to it a little bit more frequently than what it is. So you're right, this is only updated once a year.
Mm-hmm.
This is updated at the end of every semester, you know, with all the different data, you know, that you're calling out. So as I'm looking at the different percentages here, Mr. Lopez, that you mentioned, I mean, that is what we're reporting. So, you know, if there's a question with that number, I can go back and take a look at the query that we're running, you know, and how we ended up getting that data to make sure, you know, it is accurate. I will definitely go back and take a look, you know, at that as well.
So Dr. Aguilar, so on that note, that was another one of my questions. So the dashboard information comes from Aries, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and then Aries is updated at least every semester, for sure, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
And I will tell you, Mr. Valadez, one of the conversations that we did have with all of our sites and all of our principals, and it's something that I brought up to Superintendent Peterson, was, data in our area's database. It's an area of improvement district-wide in all data that we do. So, when I'm sitting here, answering your questions and you're peppering me with, is this number correct or is this number correct? I'm only as good as the data that we're putting into areas. So again, the checks and balances and the conversations that we have with all of our sites, especially around, some of the CTE data that produces our college and career indicator, if data is not being input, we're getting dirty data. We're not getting accurate data. So that's definitely an area of improvement. Also, the FIT tool was brought up a little bit earlier. That's also criteria that's on this Lcap dashboard, and I want to read what's the description that's on here, because I know that Ms. Garman, who put together this report, was relying on the data that is here on this dashboard. So the description reads: the rating of the Merced Union High School District school facilities, buildings, and grounds based on scale of 25% poor, 50% fair, 75% good, and 100% exemplary is shown on this graph. This rating comes from an annual school inspection by the custodial staff using a detailed facility checklist. So that's the tool that's used. So if you're looking at the different metrics here, again, 25% being poor, 50% being fair, 75% being good, and 100% being exemplary.
So it's not the fit they're using, the state fit, they're using a district,
They're using the state fit.
Yeah.
the state fit.
Yeah. But it could be written without the percentage. How many schools rated,
Right.
less fair or above?
Correct, and it was an effort for us to quantify, and give a number so that people have an idea without giving them the long fit tool.
Sure.
I will have a much more detailed response about that information by tomorrow for the board.
Okay, and Dr. Aguilar, so what I was getting at regarding the numbers, is that's what I was getting at, is who is making sure that the teachers and anyone who needs to input data into the areas, that it's being done? How is that, how do we know that they are actually doing it?
Yeah, so every department has their area. So for example, there's an associate principal of student services that oversees the attendance data. They ensure that correct data is being entered there. We have an associate principal of guidance that works with our guidance folks. It's their responsibility to ensure that the data is being entered. So every department has, their responsibility. Like the AP of guidance or TNL is responsible for getting all the CTE information in. So every associate principal is assigned their department, and it's up to them to oversee their classified staff to make sure that the data is getting input.
Got it. Thank you. And again, some of the questions I asked, because this is what I'm being asked, is this being done? The other comment was in regards to the counselors. So I know that we require them to meet with students at least 4 times, but some of these are in a, let's say, a classroom setting, or maybe even a gym setting. Can we not count those and only count, one-on-one meetings?
We have been pushing for our counselors to not just meet with students one-on-one, but also to meet with students in groups. There's a lot of services that our students can receive in groups, and we want to spend the best quality time we can with the individuals that we need. But coming from me in my office, we have been really pushing to have counselors meet in groups, because there are at times benefits to meeting with groups of students instead of meeting with them one-on-one. And quite frankly, meeting with students one-on-one throughout the day, I honestly can't look at you, with a straight face and say every single counselor is going to meet with every single student individually. There's just not enough hours in the day for us to be able to do that. on a quarterly basis. So counselors will be meeting with groups of students to fulfill that requirement of meeting with students at least once a quarter.
So I do understand that's necessary, but I'm saying maybe it's not 4 times, maybe it's 3 times, but you know, those are, let's say, added bonus meetings, but at least count, you know, have them one-on-one. If the number is 2, if the number is 3, but let's do that. Let's not count those as we met with the students. That's what I'm saying.
So I like your statement, Julio.
I like it
because
too.
it's distressing to me to hear that we might never meet with a student and that you're counting 500 freshmen as one meeting. And that to me is not a meeting.
Especially as we're gonna venture off and partner with Sierra Vista, that could address some of the social emotional needs in a group setting versus our other counselors meeting with kids individually.
Yeah, so let me kind of go through that.
I want to say, I appreciate your candor and honesty,
Yes.
and I think you're right. But I don't think it feels good that that's all that we're providing for our kids, right? We need to do better, and I think the Sierra Vista arrangement is going to be helpful, but it may not be enough.
Yeah, so let me kind of maybe clear, you know, some of this stuff a little bit more too with, for example, some of the work that we're doing around social emotional learning with students, after some of the surveys go out and let's say our counselors take a look at some of the data and say, oh, I need to meet with, you know, these students. There may be instances where counselors, and it would be very appropriate for counselors to meet with, you know, a small group of students or 5 or 10. By no means would we, you know, consider meeting with all students, you know, being all in the gym and saying, okay, we met with them once. What we're looking at, you know, is meeting with students in those smaller groups. And I'm thinking specifically around the work that we're going to do with social emotional learning. And some of the settings are going to need to be, you know, one-on-one, you know, with students. Some of them are going to be much smaller, you know, groups of maybe 5 or 10, maybe a few more students, you know, and that would definitely be appropriate. The second layer to that is what you're referring to, Ms. Lopez, is the Sierra Vista counselors. So, you know, once you hit a threshold and a higher tiered service that a student needs, those students are then going to be, you know, given those services to Sierra Vista, which is why they were brought on. So we want our counselors, our school counselors, to intervene with all students at a tier 1, something that's universal that all students should have access to. As our counselors are meeting with those students on a tier 1 level, and they're saying, oh, you know, Mrs. Pickle and Mrs. Lopez, Mr. Lopez and Mrs. Ham, they need more. We're going to pull them off to the side and in a smaller setting and counsel those students in a tier 2 or a tier 3. And at that point, it's when Sierra Vista counselors would intervene, when those services need to be elevated and the student need is even greater. That's where Sierra Vista would come in.
And I guess for me, maybe that's where this metric is misleading, because where it says students will have a scheduled appointment. Okay, well then that means, to me, that's a 1-to-1. That's not a 5 to 10. That's me and you sitting down, how our school going, what's your grades, what's your plan, yada, yada, yada. Met with you for 25 minutes, documented. I met with Dr. Aguilar. Next, Mrs. Ham, you're on at 9:30. Bam, okay, what's your plan? What are your grades? How's school? Yada, yada, boom. Next, Dr. Weimer. That's what I'm thinking of. That's the 1-to-1, not the 5 to 10. Because yeah, 5 to 10, you can meet with, if your counselor has been assigned 300 kids, well, heck, you can meet with a group of kids in 1 week and you've met your target for the quarter.
Our counselors, just to be clear, have anywhere between 400 to 500 students.
Okay, in 2 weeks. But you see what I'm saying? I look at that as a 1-to-1 appointment, not a group session. That's how I read that metric, a scheduled appointment.
I read it that way also.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if that's the case, let's just be straight and say, we're going to meet one time, we're going to try, and the rest will be in a group setting.
Or it could just stay individual or as a group. I mean, it could just be amended that way.
How big are these groups? I mean, generally, on average? I mean, are we talking about 100 kids or we're talking about 5 kids?
No, I would say at the very largest, you know, I would say a counselor would go in and work with the class in a class setting. Nothing greater than that. And I would say as small as smaller groups of anywhere between 5 to 15, working in, in an SEL group, a social emotional learning group. When that students need more, then it's a one-on-one. And when the students need even more than that, that's when we have the other layered services with the Sierra Vista counselor.
And I guess I don't know, are we talking different forms of counseling then? Because I'm thinking in terms of an academic checking in, how school going versus a social emotional counseling. That's two different things. So when you talk about a counselor going into a class to talk about SEL strategies with that group of 30 kids, okay, I get that. That's different data. But I'm thinking in terms of how a kid's doing, academically and inclusive of school and everything else, that's the one-to-one.
Yeah,
That's what I would love to see.
If you look at our counseling design, our counselors aren't designed to just be academic counselors and then social emotional counselors. The counselors are doing both.
Right.
So when we provide that service, in my opinion, I think you start splitting hairs. So, because we want to service the entire child.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was a real point of emphasis
Right.
when we were working with this new counseling guide, that we weren't splintering off services, right? I only see you as a counselor if I need academics. I only see you as a counselor if I need something social emotional. I only see you as a counselor, if I need some mental health services. So we're asking our counselors to do this all, right? So you can see, the enormity of the task of the job that we're asking our counselors to do. So, I mean, it's a main focus. It's something that comes up every year for our Lcap meeting,
Right.
is our counseling services
Every year. And I know that's been obviously through our 99 Roots group and our Funding Our Future. That's been one of their top 7 things that they want to see us utilize those funds for, bring on more counseling services for our kids. Or maybe, obviously with the discussion we're having now, it looks like that's a direction we need to be going. If our counselors are truly overstrapped with the amount of kids that they have on their caseloads, plus the services that we want to see them provide our kids on top of not only academic but also social emotional, then we need to truly invest in adding more counselors to our school sites so the kids have someone else that they can go to for whatever reason.
Do we have data on that? I mean, do we really know at this point how the kids are being served, to what frequency they're being served? And if not, do we just need to add that type of documentation so that then periodically that could be reported back to us? Not which students, but how many students were served for, mental health referrals, academic referrals, other type of counseling referrals.
We
And then-
have a lot of that data.
Yeah, and then based on that, we determine, what the needs are and if any changes need to be made to this in the future in
Yeah.
terms of staffing.
As we discussed last week, we all think, myself included, we need this service or that service. And what's important is that we have the ability to scale up. We're starting off with more services next year than usual. If we need more services, we'll bring them in.
So maybe we just ask for those periodic reports with some of that more detailed data that would tell us what types of services are being provided and to what frequency, how many students get the one-on-one. That could be entered in areas and that could be queried. It was a one-on-one academic conference. It was a one-on-one mental health conference. And then we can see how we're serving those students and for what we're serving them. I mean, would that be maybe a reasonable data point to
Yeah,
look
I
at?
just want to, there's got to be some reality to what life is like on a site. They have 400 and some per person. A counselor might have students scheduled, let's say they're 10th grade students, on a half hour all day long. Has it all set up, that's their plan for the day. And then a crisis happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because the 9th grade counselor is out.
Mhm.
And they need to handle a child abuse situation. And that takes all day. These things happen every day, every week at our sites. And it's not as easy as just saying, well, there's 400 kids and there's 185 school days. So, it's this many kids a day. It doesn't work like that.
Is that not what Sierra Vista is going to be doing? when there's a crisis, they step in?
Yes, some of it, yeah.
All right, so then, to continue that, on that, because I've been asking this for a long time. I remember we talked about this at Atwater High School, I don't know how many years ago, but, we're kind of asking this question is, and I've asked this before, and the answer was the APs, the associate principal who's in charge of the counselors is the one that is tracking what they're doing, but then who is making sure that the associate principal is also following up on that? And so that's
The
one thing.
principal,
Right, but is it somewhere saying, yeah, I checked off, here it is, I signed off on it? And Dr. Aguilar, in a previous LCAP money, didn't we add a counselor in order to help with this? And are we, are we keeping track of how much that helped and if it helped at all?
Yeah, so let me kind of first address the first question, and I want to emphasize this again. This is an area of growth, for us, with entering the data and being accurate with the data. And that is something that was, brought forth to all of our principals this year. With regard to, we've used LCAP money to increase services and to pay for, initially to pay for Sierra Vista counselors, which I think morphed into student support managers. So those were the counseling services that LCAP dollars initially paid for. It was the first time that we were contracting with Sierra Vista, and then that morphed into us calling them and reclassing them to student support managers. And now we're pulling even more resources. We're adding more Sierra Vista counselors this upcoming school year.
Well, I think that we have heard from parents, students, community members that counseling is just an area where we struggle. And so I'm really glad to see, that that we are contracting with Sierra Vista. But it's possible at some point we need to start thinking about the ratio of students to counselor in a more serious manner. Maybe it should only be 300 kids and we break it up differently. And it's not necessarily by all freshmen, all sophomore. I don't know. That's something for you guys to figure out. And I think that's a bigger discussion, but I think it's really something that we need to look at, because I don't think that our kids are getting the resources. There's so many resources, there's so many opportunities for kids, and I'm just not sure that they're fully aware of them. Which brings me to my next question, which was about connectivity and technology. And I know we're working on this, and I hadn't thought about this until I met with 99 Roots yesterday, and they mentioned that there's a lot of kids this summer that have no means of being in communication with the school because they don't have a MiFi anymore. So, if they're taking summer school, they're on campus, but kids all turned in their MiFis, right?
They were recalled, weren't they?
Yeah, I'd have to defer to Cheryl because I know that she took that over and was working through a process. So
Well, I guess, I know
yeah,
seniors
you're
who
right.
graduated obviously turned them in, and I was thinking that other kids turned them in as well because we're no longer doing online school. And so anyway, that occurred to me, well, you know what? Every day, 5 times a day, I'm getting a parent square message, right? But I also have to tell you that when my daughter was a freshman, it wasn't until my son was a freshman that I ever even heard about it. Wasn't parent square, it was something else. But I don't know how we're getting the message out about those ways for parents, families, kids to connect, because if you're not connected to the school right now, you don't know that football practice is going on, that the weight rooms are open, that you can join the water polo team, that, seeing how kids are doing at the fair, that drum practices are, whatever. I feel like and counselors mostly have the summer off. I know they get some extra days here and there, but how are we connecting with kids? For them, and in particular, a lot of the kids who are sophomores and older have maybe already connected with their coach, so they're or they're the band instructor, whomever, but freshmen, how do they know to even get involved? And I know we talked to them at freshman orientation in August, but that's when school's about to start, they missed the whole summer.
And if we're not already, looking into the ECF funding, the emergency connectivity funding, I'll be looking at that. Or maybe that's a
Yes.
question for Cheryl, okay. And that'll address some of that too, the extra funding for the connectivity and the devices, hotspots, so.
You know, so in terms of, just to add on to Aaron's, then, you know, the 351-to-1 ratio is the student to counselor ratio right now. So yeah, I can understand why the community is saying, no, we need to bring on social workers or extra counselors, because it would leverage those kids to have access to other people that they can talk to, you know, and I know that's the way that we've done business. That's the way it's always been done.
Right.
And now we have a chance to change that, you know, whether it's, we tweak something in the Lcap to say, we're gonna add on X amount of social workers versus waiting for the extra federal funding to come down the pipeline. You know, why don't we do it now? If we know that there's an immediate need, or we add on counselors because we know that there's an immediate need. Well, let's do it now versus waiting until the federal funding comes in, you know? The money's there and it's gonna service all students.
Richard,
So-
Mr. Lopez, I know you don't want to hear this, and the board doesn't like to hear this, but that money is going to go away in 2 years.
I understand that. But I know Dr. Weimer talked about some funding that we have to sustain, correct?
Possibly.
Okay, and then we have to sustain it, then I think we need to start looking down that road now. Because if we're gonna keep those people on board, perfect segue. Let's get these people on board now, because there is an immediate need.
Yeah, there has to
counselors and
be
social
a
workers.
sustainable pathway forward if we're going to hire permanent employees. The money's got to be there long-term.
And for now, you know, this just may be a temporary dialogue, you know, because once we truly start to see, you know, what the outcomes of the COVID era were, you know, it may be a year or two, and, you know, there may not be as a heavy need for social workers or extra counselors. And at that point, we make that determination, okay, well, we don't need all these people now because kids have transitioned back, staff have transitioned back, we're in a good way. Okay, it's time to, you know, to loosen back on personnel and truly address and just move forward. So,
Well, I know that no one intended for this conversation to take this long and go this far, but to your point, Richard, we've done it this way forever. I hear a lot from counselors that they're overworked and overstressed, and you hear from kids that they're not getting the supports that they want, and it just seems like we have a broken system. And I know we're working on retooling it, but perhaps we would have a job more successfully done if there was a more manageable caseload.
Right.
I'm not trying to excuse anyone or make excuses, or maybe if we were able to have smaller numbers of kids with counselors, we would be more successful at reaching them, and counselors would like their jobs more and be able to do a better job.
and I think in terms of meeting with kids, like, I mean, I'll use my daughter, you know, she'll probably need to see the counselor one time her freshman year, get on her pathway. You know what? I'm good to go. I'll check in with you next year. I'm good. Maybe your daughter's the same way, because they don't need that kind of support, you know, and maybe she doesn't have social emotional needs, whatever. You know what? I checked in. I have no concerns. I'm just good. My life is good. I'm done. Okay, you know what? Those 20 minutes can go to somebody else then, because my daughter's good. You know, but that's not every kid, and we know that.
And then you have the kids who will go out of their way to seek the counselor.
Correct.
Because they have the, the self-knowledge and self-awareness, confidence to do that. And then you got a lot of kids who, counselor, what am I going to counselor for? What are they going to help me with?
Okay, I think we can probably call for the vote.
I appreciate the dialogue, guys, very much. Thank you.
Me too.
Thank you, Julio.
Another
Thank
question.
you, yeah, all good.
I have another question though. But thank you, guys. Aaron and Richard, I think, you know, we're talking about it, and I think we're all on the same page on that. At least us three are on the same page as to what, you know, we think or hope that we can accomplish. I know that, I mean, the LCAP money I don't know, Dr. Aguilar, if there's money that we can allocate, more money to allocate for more counselors if necessary in the future or whatever, but I think we're kind of on the same page on that going forward.
think that has been hit.
And then the other question I had is on page 25, I think it's page 25. Yeah, recruit, retain highly qualified staff. So it's saying that we have $3 million in there, right? So can you just explain a little bit of where that money goes?
I'm sorry, you're looking at page 25 or?
26 is the metric, or
Oh, I'm sorry, it's 26. 26.
one of the actions,
Yeah.
one action.
I think I'm going blind.
I would have to defer that to Dr. Weimer with regard to the total funds and the, that dollar amount.
Part of that money is COLA from previous raises that we've authorized out of the Lcap, and part of that is new raises.
Okay, well, no, that's one part. The other part is, it's saying that we recruit and retain highly qualified staff. I know that when we choose to not re-elect staff, we don't have to give them a reason. However, I think that we, the board, should know, and there should be let's say a system where and it probably is already, but they're not shown to us, but we talk to this person, this teacher, and we told them, this is what you need to do to improve. I want to see like an improvement plan that they did not meet, and that's why we're letting them go. Versus we just let them go because we let them go. Whatever, I'm not. Well, anyways, whatever. But I think that we should see that. If I'm going to vote on it, I want to know why. I want to know why I'm going to let go of these people. We don't even get names. Sometimes we just say there's a group of this many from this side, and that's it. Bang, vote on it. I know that the staff is doing, their job and so on, and I do trust that most are doing their job, and but for me, if I'm going to vote, I need to know why, and I need to know that we took the steps to try and help them do that. Because again, we're saying that we're recruiting and retaining highly qualified staff. And if we recruited and hired them, I'm assuming that we thought they were highly qualified. Is that correct?
The problem with your line of thinking is the ed code gives us the opportunity to have a teacher in our district for about 1.5 years. And if they're making progress towards our standard, we're certainly more likely to keep them. It also, that same ed code gives us the opportunity to release teachers without cause. I think where we would run into trouble and put the district into a very precarious situation, litigation and such, is when we try to establish a cause to release an individual. And when we do that, then it's a different standard. And I don't think we want to go down that road.
Julio, that's not the spirit of the action. I think that's a different discussion. So I'd like to move us along and have Leslie submit for the vote, please.
It is a part of it. I mean, everything we talk about is I don't see why it wouldn't be. But anyways, I'm not saying create something new. I'm just saying we probably do already. Mr. Calderon or Ms. Ballinger, you guys can tell me that, hey, we talked to this, and I'm not saying tell me right now, but I'm saying in general, we did try and guide these new teachers to go the way that we want them, but they didn't improve. So that's why we're letting them go. And we don't have to tell them. I know we don't have to tell them. I'm saying that it's closed, it's a personnel issue, so it would be behind closed doors and it doesn't go out of there. We know why, and that's it. Then we can vote on it I can vote on it, or we should be able to vote on it confidently that, hey, they did what they could and it didn't help.
Okay. Thank you. Can you let us know the outcome of the vote, Mrs. Rorbach?
I'm still waiting for Mr. Ham and Mr. Valdez.
President Pickle, as Ms. Rohrbach is waiting, if I may, just for point of clarity, I will follow up with page 11, the baseline data. I made a note here to add the data source as far as, where that data, what that data is. And then also on page 13, for the past BLA scores, 2019, I'm going to add the data source so that I think there's some confusion as I was looking at our Lcap dashboard data and then DataQuest data. So I want to make sure that there's the data source there so that there isn't confusion as to what those numbers mean. So I will add those, and then I'll do the same thing for the math. You didn't ask me about the math, but I think it'll be the same question. So that way we know if it's internal Lcap metrics that we're looking at, or if it's CAS DataQuest data that we're looking at.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
The motion passed 3-1, Mr. Valdez, so you know.
Okay. The motion carries 3-1 with the dissenting vote being trustee Valdez. We'll move on to item 10.02, proposed 2021-22 budget with Dr. Weimer. And do we have,
There are no changes to the slides from last week. From the budget, I can give you a little bit of updates, one of which might address what we were just talking about. Two things, ESSER 3 was made available this last week, and so we can apply for those funds. We'll be applying for those funds tomorrow. There will be a end of September deadline when we have to bring before the board an actual expenditure plan for those funds. So you will see right when we come back in the fall meetings to address input for those and to be able to develop how that money will be spent over the next 3 years. So that will be coming as we come back. Welcome to California. There's a June 15th deadline to pass the state budget, or the legislature does not get paid. So the legislature passed their budget yesterday on time, but the governor did not agree. So we know that it's still going to change. So we were hoping to have clarity by today because we were going to have a budget at the state level, and that's just not going to be true. So there will be at least two pieces of information that we won't know until later in June. They have till June 30th to actually work out any differences between the governor and the legislature before they run into timeline deadlines. So once we have that information, we can move forward on probably two other areas. The two areas that are mostly of effect to the budget that would have some change to the budget. The first one is they want to have money for Saturday school and after school programs and possibly extending the year like we did this year. So more of an extension of the year than a really summer school type of a program. And it would increase the amount of time we had. I think it's 6 o'clock that we would have to have activities going on. But it would basically make some of the things we're looking at doing in the ELO plan permanent and be regularly funded. So after the ELO money runs out, we would have money to continue to do tutorials, after school programs that would build on assets. So we would still be getting assets for after school, but to build on that and have more robust programs, Saturday school and summer school. So that could be a ongoing source of funding that will be coming in the budget, depending on how the governor and the legislature work out their differences on that particular plan. Second one has to do with an increase in supplemental and concentration funds. And again, this would be an ongoing increase. Right now, there's a formula based on how many unduplicated students we get, and then we get additional monies which are in the Lcap. They want to increase the formula, and that would be a permanent ongoing, until they reversed it in a later budget. For now, it would be an ongoing source of funds, and both of them are in agreement. They're not in agreement on how much funds or how to exactly fund it, but they're both in agreement that it would be for the sole purpose of increasing the adult to student ratio in direct student services on a campus. So if that passes, we will obviously be back, whether they make it an addendum to the Lcap or whether they make it a different plan in their first year. How they do that, we don't know yet, but that will probably be coming back as well, and that money will have to be for direct services for students, increasing the number of adults to students on a campus. So that might help with part of the discussion that we were just having under the Lcap. If that passes, then we should know that within about 2 weeks. And again, that would be ongoing funding and not one-time grant funding. So those are the major things that have happened between last week to this week. The slides have not changed. They are staying the same. And the superintendent recommends the board approve the budget and the positive certification.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, before we discuss, we do have comment.
Yeah, so, you know, since, well, I met with Chrissy Gallardo and the funding.
Well, I think Leslie has public comment.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
before,
sorry.
and then we'll discuss.
After you said
Yeah.
you had comment.
Sorry,
I said you
no,
had comment. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Leslie.
No, that's my mistake. Okay.
I'll wait for you anytime.
I'm sorry about that.
Okay, Mrs. Pickle, we have several comments on this item. Actually, there are 20. They are all, the same comment with just a few variations. And so I'll do what I did last week and read the names and then one of the comments. So these comments were made by Miranda Griswold, Bozvon Lore, Michael Velasco, Kelly Yang, Bu Cheng, Chao Zhang, Jiaxi Tao, Kaser Tao, Bridget Vang, Jose Garcia, Thomas Mua, Kimberly Jarrett, Ulysses Zambrano, Edgar Duarte, Lucy Bang, Sarah Johnson, Jennifer Zhang, George Bang, Brianna Miller, Aiden Mondo, and Natalie. And their comment is, I support the Fund Our Futures campaign because the students of Merced deserve better. First and foremost, we appreciate all the work that you are doing during this difficult year. We urge you to prioritize new investments for the academic support, success, and wellness of low-income English learners, foster youth, and students of color, who are the hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. The American Rescue Plan funding must be transformative for Merced students and their families who have the right to a just recovery and debt-free future. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated many of the inequities that have always existed in our county. In 2019, Black students in MUHSD were 3.8% of the student population, yet they had the highest expulsion suspension rate in 2019-20 at 6.4%. We're also aware that the student-to-counselor ratio is 351 to 1. Student-to-nurse ratio is 1,503 to 1. And student-to-psychologist ratio is 2,105 to 1. School-based social workers are non-existent, and teachers, liaisons, and other school staff have had to take on additional responsibilities to cover this gap. We urge the Merced Union High School District to protect our young people by investing in equitable youth and community development through the American Rescue Plan. Specifically, we are making the following recommendations with a particular and specific emphasis on English learners, foster youth, and low-income students of color. This budget cycle invests $10 million to support academic success, mental health, and wellness of all MUHSD students. Retroactive universal passing for seniors and individual support plans. Invest in student lounges at each high school campus with long-term plan of school-based health centers. Hire 9 school-based social workers to support students, paid summer youth engagement opportunities for students, implement comprehensive sex education curriculum that is inclusive of the LGBTQIA community and train staff on LGBT inclusivity. Allocate $1 million towards the establishment of a scholarship for vulnerable students, Black youth, undocumented students, and low-income students of color. In addition to the funds we are requesting, we also would like to assert that no federal funds be used for punishment in any way, meaning no cops on campus. In Merced County, we have a chance to build a new chapter. We can't go back to normal.
Thank you, Mrs. Rohrbach. Okay. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, okay, so I guess with the cabinet members that we have here, so, you know, Leslie read out those 7 key points that they want to see funding for with the American Rescue Funds. You know, so as far as like number 1, the universal passing for seniors and individual student plans, I mean, I guess it's a valid point, and maybe our counselors can address, the individual student plans moving forward. Where are we with the universal passing? And I know that we talked about it last week with a one-to-one, meet with, right? Meet
No,
with people.
universal passing, I believe means seniors this year,
Correct,
right?
correct. And they wanted to go retroactive, right? So I guess, yeah, this year, 2021. So 2021.
Yeah, no, we did not do that.
Okay. And I know we've had conversations about investing in student lounges, and then obviously the long-term plan with the school-based health centers. And I know that when Christy and I talked, we talked about meeting with a young Yvette from Golden Valley Health Centers. And I think I guess they're one of their top people there as to how we start that dialogue with yourself and see what that may look like for our merged schools.
Sure.
And start that conversation moving forward. I think we've addressed the school-based social workers to support students. Obviously, it's a high need. I mean, I hate to wait until we get this fund so we can move on that sooner than later. I'm not too sure about the paid summer youth and engagement opportunities for kids and what that may look like. So I guess that's a conversation for down the road. And then as far as like the sex ed curriculum, who currently gets it in the high school district? Which grade level?
The freshmen do, and then students, it's part of the health curriculum that's state mandated. And then also the students that take the health and family living class.
Is it a comprehensive one? Like they're talking about to address everything and not just, male, female stuff, like everything in general, now with everything going on?
You mean for health?
Yeah, it's mandated by the state.
Okay, so then we are offering a comprehensive then?
We are offering the comprehensive for health, and all freshmen get it.
Sex ed?
STDs, HIV, I mean, everything.
So is it inclusive of the LGBTQA? I mean, INA?
It is.
Okay,
It is, yeah.
okay, all right. And then, so when she and I talked, obviously, I think that thing, with the no cops on campus, like I told her that we need to find a happy medium somewhere, because in my opinion, I think having an SRO on campus still adds that level of safety, for the majority of our kids, that we need to find a way to, either we bring people on board as SROs that we can train to be more out there with our kids and engage with our kids so that they don't have this I don't know, this dark shadow on them that they're all bad people, because they're not. And I think if we can work with our SROs and remove that filter, that they're one of our team, and they want what's best for our kids. And there are going to be circumstances where, yeah, they're going to have to do the job. I guess we talked about just fights in general, or the emergency that happened at Golden Valley a couple of years ago. I mean, yeah, as a trustee to know that within 7 minutes, that place was shut down and every, department in Merced County was there and had that thing under control. You know what? As a parent, I'm glad they were on campus, because they did their job and my child was safe, and just removing that stigma from just SROs or cops in general, that they are here to provide a service for us. And as a parent, at some point having 3 kids that we had, to have an SRO on campus, yeah, I felt my kids were okay, that they'd be safe if something were to happen. So, it's just having that dialogue with them as, let's work together, whether it's training for SROs and be more kid-friendly or whatever else, and more approachable. I think they'd be open to that, versus completely removing everybody off of campus.
Richard?
Well, and I would hope that our police departments are open to that as well.
That dialogue also.
Having more of a presence, but in a very positive way.
Correct.
Versus,
Just negative, right?
only showing up when there's a crisis.
Right. Go ahead, Julio, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So following along with that, you're beating me to the punch today, but I was going to ask the same question, but ask Alan and Cabinet to kind of give a quick summary of the things we're already addressing that they're asking. I think you kind of went over some already, but if they can add a little bit to it. But on the last one that you were talking about, I do agree. And when for example, Livingston is my, where I grew up. And so I know some of the SROs, not only at the high school, but at the elementary level, right? And, one of the things I had commented is that, Yes, I do agree. We need both, the SROs plus we do need, like now that, Sierra Vista's coming in, them, so that, my suggestion was kind of if they have an interaction with an SRO, then they mandatorily have to meet with a counselor or the, Sierra Vista, people. So, I mean, that's one thing, but one of the things I wanted to point out is that I've had at least 5 families approach me and say that, one time they changed an SRO, at one of the sites, and they were very concerned. They said, well, that specific SRO really, was helping my son. He was doing better. He started getting better grades, and so on and so on. So they are helpful as well. But like I said, if there's if they think there was a negative interaction with an SRO, maybe they have an automatic meeting with the clinician or whatever we call the Sierra Vista people. But back to the thing, Alan or cabinet, we talked about this last week, like Richard said. Is there anything you guys want to add that we're already covering from the list of requests from the students? Because we all agreed that these were, most were valid points, or all, most or all were valid points, and we want to hear when we got over 100 emails. When we hear from students and alumni, because they're not that old, they're in college somewhere, some of them, and they're advocating for the current youth because they've been through something in our high schools. I think we do need to look at this stuff and see if there's anything that we can improve. So, do you have anything to add, Alan or cabinet?
No, I think Mr. Lopez summarized it well. I think the vast majority of issues are covered, maybe not exactly how they wanted it, other than the SRO issue. We have work to do on the community health. We talked about that last week. We would love to have one in every city. So I think we're either doing many well or on our way there.
And just so you guys are aware, as part of my dialogue with Christy on addressing the scholarships, I asked her to do some research on that because I wasn't sure that we could appropriate public funds for scholarships. So she was going to go and look as far as, what if other districts are allocating a set amount for scholarships for students. So I wasn't sure on that one. I mean, that one that we could do it legally, and 2 of others were doing it. So.
Well, I mentioned in the last meeting that I went to a high school to give a scholarship on behalf of the organization I'm involved with, and they did give scholarships to a lot of scholarships. Like every department gave a scholarship to the amounts I don't know, but they gave a scholarship to a student from each department, from science, from English, and so on and so on. So. Anyway, so that's that. There was something. Alan, you had mentioned also that you were gonna have a follow-up meeting with them to just. Is that something that you're still planning to do?
Yes, one of the cabinet members can do that. I'm not going to make any promises about when, but certainly sometime this summer.
Okay, and when you do that, can I be invited to that, please?
Sure.
Thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Do we still have, I don't remember what they're called, like a family lounge or a parent center on every campus? Yeah?
Yeah.
But,
That
Yeah,
was,
dual purpose,
okay,
not necessarily just that.
okay.
so that was the parent resource center, right? That's what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Parent
yeah,
resource center,
thank you.
okay.
Yes, yes.
Thank
But
you.
just so you
Thank
know, on those, anyways, they did not allow the students to be there without the parents, just an FYI.
Right.
Mm.
So only when the parents were there, then students can be, there. It's not really a,
Yeah. Students have to be supervised, yes.
right, it's not really a student.
So one of my questions was, I know at UHAC, a teacher had set some space aside in her classroom that was a place that students could come when they needed their own personal timeout, right? Merced High, I know, was in the process of creating one. They'd set aside a portable space that was gonna be for that, where I don't know who was staffing it, a liaison or whatever, but I feel like that would be tremendously relevant and helpful. And if, I think the spaces mostly already exist. And if we could look into that as maybe part of the wellness center, if you will. Staffed, I think it should be staffed. I think it should be, I don't know. Obviously, I'm closest to Merced High, and Steph's the liaison there. Every kid is better because of her influence. And if she had that open, few periods and students came in there, it would be remarkable.
Well, she's always there, at everything.
She's at everything because she loves the
Yes,
kids.
yes.
She loves them, and so she wants to be there. So, anyway, I don't know that would be any kind of a big new investment, but I think it's something that we should look at trying to coordinate or have on campus.
Get that dialogue going, Mrs. Ham. Maybe we gotta get start somewhere, good.
We'll go ahead and call for the vote then, Mr. Roebuck.
That item passed 4-0.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to item 10.03, Education Protection Account and Public Hearing.
I didn't already make a motion, but
No.
Yeah.
if you want me to.
I saw
It's
that.
because it's marked as consent, and so when the consent agenda was voted on, it voted that too. So we'll just do it manually, and then I'll fix that.
Okay, we just need the public hearing and then the vote, correct? Yes, okay,
And Dr. Weimer needs to present the item.
okay. Okay, Dr. Weimer?
Pardon?
Just saw that consent in print.
Yeah.
One of the requirements when Proposition 30 was passed by the voters on November 6, 2012, was adding Article 13, Section 36 to the Constitution, creating in the General Fund an Education Protection Act. Was to give a public hearing. Another requirement for the EPA is to have a resolution adopted. Basically, what this does is there's a formula, and we have to run that formula every year and ensure that we are using that money for in the classroom non-administrative costs. And so we run that number based on that formula and pass the resolution that says, yes, we spend that $24 million in the classroom. So the superintendent recommends the Board of Trustees adopt Resolution 14-20 for the Education Protection Account and conduct a public hearing.
Okay, so we need to make the motion first, then the hearing, or a hearing first?
It's a hearing.
Okay. So we will open the public hearing at 7:56. And are there any comments on that item?
There were none submitted.
Okay. Then we will close the public hearing at 7:57. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on the item? We'll call for the vote then, please.
And we need to do that verbally.
Oh, verbally,
Aye.
roll call. Okay.
Aye.
Trustee Lopez is an aye. Trustee Ham is an aye. Trustee Valdez?
Aye.
And Trustee Pickle is an aye. Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
Item 10.04, ratification of the contract between MUHS-DTA and the Merced Union High School District. Mrs. Ballinger.
Thank you, President Pickle. Contract negotiations began in March 2021 for a successor agreement on the current year contract between MUHSD and the District Teachers Association, which expires June 30th, 2021. Negotiators reached a tentative agreement on June 4th, 2021, and the tentative agreement was presented and ratified by MUHS DTA membership on June 7th through 9th, 2021. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Dr. Weimer to give you some of the specifics.
Dr. Weimer, I'm sorry, before you go on, I do need to leave to another meeting, but I would like to put on the next agenda that we allow the public into the meetings. But thank you all. Have a good night. I'm sorry I have to leave.
Yeah, Julio.
Bye, Julio.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
So very quickly, in ratification for the DTA contract, here's some information about raises and COLAs. Components of compensation, one of the things we need to remember, salaries. The salary schedule includes automatic raises by staff being able to move steps and/or columns. Retirement contributions and health benefits and caps. So these are the things that we're talking about when we do talk about compensation and when we're having negotiations. Potential sources to pay for raises, either new ongoing funding when LCFF was increased each year until the formula was fully funded, new money was coming in each year. Most raises were coming from the Lcap and were tied to increased services like the 7th period day. That is fully funded now, so we do not get new ongoing funding from that source any longer. The second way is cost of living adjustments, which is what we have this year. Cost of living adjustments are based on federal statistics related to inflation and the cost of living. And so as we get those funds, those are usually given out as foreign raises to adjust for the fact that costs for staff is going up, basically in their living expenses. One-time funds could be used, but once the funds run out, how do you continue to fund raises? That's why we have the same conversation with hiring new people as we do with raises. It's how do you pay for that with the services when the one-time funds are gone? Using reserves would be a one-time funding sources as well. And so how do you continue to fund that once you pay for it out of the reserves for 1 year? How would you continue to pay for it? So we do not recommend, obviously, using one-time funds for raises, and we do not have any of that in this particular offer and negotiation. The other way would then be to cut services to be able to have excess funds to be able to use in the source of raises. Expenses that have to be covered by COLA, because it's not just what we negotiate with staff. We have other increases that happen, and COLA is the only way we have to pay for those expenses as well. Any increase to salaries and benefits, obviously, any increase to STIRS and PERS, we're lucky right now. We haven't seen increases, and the state has been helping with those, but at some point that is going to end, and those could potentially start to go up again. We did see an increase in taxes. So we saw that this year. We had a $1 million increase for unemployment insurance, and we have to cover that somehow. The legislature is trying to reduce that amount, so hopefully we only have to pay an extra $500,000 this year instead of $1 million. But that still compares to the $40,000 we paid last year. So again, COLA is our only source of new funding. This is an increase for us. We have to be able to pay for those things as well. Automatic movement on step and column based on salary schedule raises. We usually estimate that to be about a 1.5% increase every year happens, whether we do anything or not. It just happens automatically. And increase in staffing. So if we were to hire new staff and we did not have new oncoming money, then we have to find a way to pay for that out of the COLA. If the cost of the above exceeds the new funding from a COLA, then the district potentially would not have the ability to cover the increase from the, would have to take the COLA from non-personnel costs. And therefore, we would not necessarily be able to see increases. So right now, we're seeing large increases in gasoline prices, any type of construction that's going on, wood prices, everything is through the roof right now. We have to use COLA to offset those increases in our costs in our other areas. And so if we can't cover the increases to personnel because of the COLA, the 80% of the COLA, which is tied to personnel, then we aren't able to cover our increased expenses in the other areas. So we have to take that into account as well. So where are we with the 2020 to 2023? So COLA, we can see across the board up at the top for 2021, which is this current year, was 2.31. 21-22 was 2.76. They're not giving us any of the money for 2021. So that 2.31 actually starts next year. So we got 0 for COLA for this particular year. So adding those two together, you're going to be at 5.07 for the COLA coming in. But again, part of that was for this year and for next year, because we we did not receive any COLA funding this year. The tentative agreement is 4.04 covering the 2021 to 21-22 year, and then a 2.48 for 22-23. We would reopen if that COLA changes. So right now it's at COLA. If COLA changes, we would reopen if it goes down or up. $1,000 on the health cap and a 3% one-time bonus for the 2020-2021. And they wanted that equally divided among their members. So when we take 3% of salaries and equally divide that, it came out to about $3,450. The salary and the cap increases are to cover the cost of inflation, not increased services. So we weren't getting new money, it was just COLA money. So again, there were no increased services that were coming for that. And they were close to COLA, just a little bit under COLA. The 3% will be paid for from the COVID fund that we have. Any costs for step, column, and STIRS will be covered by non-personnel COLA funds. Any increase in sections and unemployment insurance will be covered by COVID funds. So again, we are able to use ESSER funds to be able to offset that increase in unemployment insurance. And as long as it only lasts 1 or 2 years, we'll be able to use our COVID money for that. If it continues after that, then it would start to be something we'd have to build into the budget. The last settlement with DTA was for the 2018-2019 and 2019-2020 school years. The current tentative agreement covers 2020-21, 21-22, and 22-23. Management is on the same cycle as DTA, with the last increase being for the 2018-2019 and 2019-2020 school year. Management is unrepresented and does not negotiate a contract. They get a similar offer to what is negotiated with the bargaining bid. CSEA is not on the same cycle with DTA. You'll see that on the next slide. The last settlement for CSEA was in 2019, 2020, and 2020-21. Negotiations are currently underway for 21-22 school year. So if we look at the chart here, it looks kind of greens and blues kind of run together there, but the greens are things that are settled already. So obviously everybody has settled 2017-18, 2018-19, 2019-2020. You can see in blue there that 2020 and 2021 is already settled for CSEA, so that is not something we're discussing right now, which is this current calendar year. We're already settled for this current calendar year. You can see the orange there that DTA was not settled for this current year. So the offer for DTA covers this year plus future years. You can see it's a 1.84, but it's not going to be given to them for this year. It's going to start for next year. Then they're going to get the 2.2 for next year. So those two together would give you the 4.04%. $1,000 on the health benefits, which comes out to be about 0.86%. And then PD rate, Saturday rate is going from $40 to $50. And then for 2020, 2021, you see a 3% raise that we were talking about, and then the 2.48. So that is what you will see for DTA. You will see management getting that same offer afterwards, because management is on that same scale with DTA, that same time frame. That will not include cabinet level members. Cabinet members cannot be receiving a raise during a special board meeting, so cabinet level ones will come back to you in August. It would be management other than cabinet level positions. CSEA, you'll see 2021, 22, and 22, 23 is not settled at this particular time. We met with them on May 11th, was the last time. We offered 3 other dates in May that they were not available for. They have reached out to us, and we do have a calendar date for June 29th to meet with them. And we will be making similar offers to what we had for DTA in those years that are still up in the 21, 22 and the 22, 23. Questions?
Thank you, Dr. Weimer.
I will pass it back to Mandy for I will pass it back to Ms. Ballinger for the recommendation.
You just did all that, and she's going to read the recommendation?
Yes. And take the next speech.
The superintendent recommends the Board of Trustees ratify the collective bargaining agreement between MUHSD Teachers Association and the Merced Union High School District for the 2021 contract year and the 2021-22 and 2022-23 of the new contract term.
Thank you, Mr. Ballinger. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, so Dr. Weimer, obviously, I think we received the emails this afternoon on behalf of Mrs. Amaripa and also Mrs. McCutcheon, in terms of the CSEA, and Truth and Transparency is what it was titled. And one of their statements says that the district attempted to offer all employee groups the same. So obviously not, right?
We try to offer the same percentages. How different groups decide to take those percentages in any given year is pretty much left to them. So if we came to 3% on one group, but they wanted 2% on salary and 1% on health benefits, we would probably still be at 3% on the other bargaining unit. But if they wanted all on salary, we would be fine with that.
Gotcha.
So we try to keep the amounts that we offer for each particular calendar year the same when we're talking about the salaries and the health benefits. So if there are other issues like PD, other types of things like that, those diverge. But when we're talking about health benefits and salary increases, we try to keep the percentages matching up.
And I know,
Again, part of it is a little bit difficult because we're not on the same years.
gotcha.
So DTA is this year, and the next 2 years, CSEA is already settled for this year. And so we would be talking next year. So would the whole package be the same? Probably not. But what we would be offering in any individual year, we try to make sure those match up.
So obviously you said that we met in May, the early part of May. So what's taken so long from May to now to finally have a set date in June to meet with them so we can get this conversation going?
Yeah, we offered 3 dates in May, and we did not get information back from them to be able to meet on those dates. So we're assuming they were not available for those dates. When they responded, they gave us 3 options, June 25th, June 29th, and July 8th. We were not available on the 25th, so we are scheduled to meet on the 29th.
So as part of that dialogue with them, it's something that they meet, just I guess, their local chapter meet with our bargaining team, or do they bring an outside party to meet with part of their bargaining team? So is that kind of the holdup, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, that's the holdup. It's easier with DTA. They'll meet and we can work things out.
Gotcha.
On Zoom or face-to-face, however they're doing it. And they don't always need the
gotcha,
rep there.
gotcha.
CSEA generally does.
So do they prefer to have their rep there, is what I'm getting at?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
So I'm just hopeful that, hopefully that, during these next few years that we can, I don't know, find a way that we can, just have a conversation with them, not always needing a rep there. Because I think we're all kind of on the same boat as to what they might be asking for, so we can just get this dialogue going a lot faster than waiting and waiting and waiting.
We would love that.
Before their rep, it may not be available or maybe out for whatever reason, just pushes those dates back, and then it makes it look like we're not making any movement to try to settle with them or start that conversation. So, okay. Thank you.
Understood.
All right. I think we're ready
Thank
to,
you for everyone working on this
Oh, yeah,
plan,
most definitely.
with DTA, and I think our teachers should feel really good about, where we've landed, so thank you. I know everyone worked really hard. It was an exceptional year, and it's nice to be able to give a little bonus. And I look forward, like you were saying, Richard, to doing the same, with our classified staff.
there's no other comments, and I'll call for the vote. Mrs. Roebuck?
Okay, that item passed with a 3-0 vote.
Thank you. Motion carries 3-0. Moving on to item 10.05, certificated and classified management and confidential employees remuneration for 2020-21, 2021-22, and 22-23. Mrs. Ballinger.
Thanks again, Mrs. Pickle. As you know, the MUHSD Teachers Association came to a tentative agreement on June 4th, 2021, and the tentative agreement was presented and ratified by their membership on June 7th through 9th. The tentative agreement included an increase in fringe benefits and remuneration. The fringe benefit and remuneration proposal for confidential, certificated, and classified management mirrors the agreement settlement with the certificated staff, which is the following. Effective the 2021-22 enrollment period, the district will pay health insurance premiums up to $11,161. Effective July 1st, 2021, a 1.80% salary increase for 2021. I keep getting those 20s messed up. And a 2.2% for 21-22 for a 4.04% increase in the salary schedule. One-time off-schedule bonus for 2021 in the amount of $3,473. Effective July 1st, 2022, a 2.48 salary increase for 22-23. Cabinet level positions are not included in this action as they must be approved at a regular board meeting. Cabinet remuneration will be at the regular board meeting agenda in August. The superintendent recommends the Board of Trustees approve the remuneration increase for the 2020-21, 2021-22, and 2022-23 years.
Thank you, Mrs. Ballinger.
Thank
Is
you.
there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. And there is a public comment on this item, Mrs. Roebuck?
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Pickle. The comment was submitted by CSEA Chapter 252, and the comment reads, CSEA believes we have communicated with the board and the superintendent that inequitable and impeding tactics we have encountered in negotiating with the district. We are dismayed to see the following board agenda item statement under background and discussion for the following action item. Certificated and classified management and confidential employees remuneration for the 2021, 21-22, and 22-23. District leadership had made an effort to offer all employee groups similar fringe benefit and remuneration increases. The fringe benefit and remuneration proposal for confidential certificated and classified management mirrors the agreement settlement with certificated staff, which is the following. Effective for the 2021-22 enrollment period, the district will pay health insurance premiums up to $11,161. Any savings which is generated from the employees who choose a health care plan below the cap or is generated from reduced premiums will be used to reduce the premiums of all employees. This language is intended to apply to savings due to health benefit provider practices as of October 1st, 2006. Any changes to these practices shall require that the parties renegotiate this provision before application. Effective July 1st, 2021, a 1.8% salary increase for the 2021 and a 2.2 for the 21-22 for a 4.04 increase to the salary schedule. One-time off-schedule bonus for the 2021 in the amount of $3,473, and effective July 1st, 2022, a 2.48% salary increase for the 22-23. Granted, we are happy to see that the district has reached an agreement with our certificated staff, but to state an untruth that the district leadership had made an effort to offer all employee groups similar fringe benefit and remuneration increases is blatantly misleading to the actuality of what has been occurring. Granted, we do want to see our salary tables adjusted to reflect the anticipated minimum wage increase, as many of our classified employees, such as our cafeteria workers, who are at range D and extremely valuable in ensuring our students are provided healthy meals regularly, are making less than the proposed minimum wage amount at step one. Management has always had the opportunity to settle with either the classified or certificated unit, depending on who gets the bigger piece of the pie, per se. We can see that this is so when a 6.48% salary increase over a 3-year period and open for reopeners, additional monies on the cap, professional development that is in addition to their contract days, and so on is something that we don't have documented in our notes of all the meetings as of this date. We will be going back to the negotiations table on June 29th, and we are hoping for a more forthright and productive session. Our classified employees are being hired for positions that are being asked or told to cover others, as well as a multitude of reasons including guiding our administration who often move in the district. The freezing of positions under assumptions with no questions asked and no actual knowledge of what the position did perplexes us and those employees it affects. There will be repercussions down the line, but although we have reached out to administration to express our concerns as to whom will fulfill the duties, this too has been brushed aside. When it comes down to the classified, all we get are emails back and forth, hired for one job and having you do 2 others. The only thing we hear from a board member is thanks for looking out for the district, but how do you know if what they're looking through is not smudged? We need everyone to remember that the district is made up of more than just the power to be. It's okay to ask questions before just saying yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Robach. Okay, any discussion on the item? Any questions?
Well, I think we've talked about it, but I also look forward to we look forward to productive conversation, you know, and dialogue with our CACA unit starting on June 29th, so we can, you know, truly get down to what, you know, what they're wanting or what they're looking for. Obviously, you know, we're talking 2 different groups between our DTA and CSCA, you know, so yeah, I get it to some extent, it's the same as far as numbers go. So however, we can make it work for them also, because yeah, I mean, throughout this whole pandemic, it was our classified people that were at the front lines, you know, that were out there with the meals and ensuring the classrooms were cleaned every single day and just ready just in case we're ready to bring kids back. So yeah, we hear you. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Then we'll go ahead and call for the vote then, please.
And Dr. Weimer, to their point, as far as some of these classified management positions, that they go with whatever group has the most to offer, and they can, is that, how much truth is to that comment?
I've only been doing this for 2 years now, so I can only speak for that, and we're not on the same rotation.
Okay,
So when we're not on the same rotation, we take the rotation that we're on. So right
Okay.
now, DTA and management have the same years that are not settled, and CSEA has different years that are not settled.
okay.
But
As far as the
Additionally-
option to pick, and I understand what you're saying, because you're not on the same cycle, but if they were, are they given that option to say, hey, if DTA is gonna get 5 and CSEA is gonna get 4, well, we're gonna go 5%?
No, Mr. Lopez, that's not accurate. Sometime before 2010, there was a decision made by management to either go with DTA or CSEA. And at that time, management chose to go with the DTA offers, whatever they were.
So from 2010 forward, Mr. Calderon, it's been, they go with the DTA, and that's it?
Yeah, don't
Okay.
quote me on the date. It could have been even before that.
Okay, that's it. Okay, thank you, sir, for clarifying that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Calderon.
Okay, the motion passed 3-0.
Motion carries 3-0. Item 10.06, annual declaration of need of fully qualified educators. Mrs. Ballinger.
State law required school districts to file an annual declaration of need for fully qualified educators with the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. The purpose of the declaration is to identify those projected positions difficult to fill with fully credentialed individuals and anticipates there will be a need to grant current teachers with emergency credentials. The Human Resources Department has evaluated the availability of fully credentialed individuals and anticipates there will be a need to grant current teachers with emergency credentials in the following areas: emergency CLAD/EL authorizations 6 and limited assignment permits 30. Any revisions to this declaration will necessitate board approval. The superintendent recommends the board approve the declaration of need for fully qualified educators for the 2021-22 school year.
Thank you, Mrs. Ballinger. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I will second the motion. Any questions, Mrs. Ham?
I have none, thank you.
Okay. Then we will go ahead and call for the vote, please.
I'm an aye, I'm sorry. Water.
Motion carries 3-0. Thank you. Do you want to speak to the next two items, Mr. Peterson? Do we need to make a motion?
Table.
I was just gonna say, I need to recuse myself from these.
Yeah, and we don't have a third vote, so we're gonna have to table these, and these are time sensitive. It's going to require a special meeting quickly.
So, do we need to make a motion to move those or remove them?
We just don't make a
You
motion.
know, just
Okay.
let it go.
Just carry it over? Okay. Then, that would end the, action agenda, and so we will move to reports and discussions. Mr. Peterson, do you have any?
We have one report tonight, which was a request, from Mrs. Ham
Okay.
on, is that what you're referring to?
Just, review of current board policies, whatever.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
okay.
And so it's reviewing a number of different policies related to discrimination, bullying, hate-motivated behavior. Cabinet looked over these, and I'll let Mrs. Ham speak to this, but I think she was looking for inclusivity and making sure basically that they were all solid. And we found them to be, and I'm sure the board has looked them over, and if you have any suggestions, please go ahead and make them.
I read through all of them, and to remind everyone, we were specifically asked about this by a group as part of the anti-Asian hate crimes that were happening around the country. And so you can read in here, governing board is committed to providing a safe learning environment to protect students from discrimination, harassment, intimidation, bullying, and other behavior motivated by a person's hostility towards another person's real or perceived ethnicity, national origin, immigrant status, sex, gender, sexual orientation, religious belief, age, disability, or any other physical or cultural characteristic. So, and I mean, it goes on, and it's very supportive and inclusive, and, you know, I think our goal is to protect every single one of our students, and while 100% we don't condone the behavior, the anti-Asian behavior at all, I think we've covered the fact that there is zero tolerance for harassment or bullying or hate in our district. So that was the purpose of this discussion. I just wanted to review it and make sure that we did indeed.
Thank you for bringing that up.
No, and I encourage members to, on whatever topic, to do this. We need to probably do more policy review and make sure things are up to date. It was a very good exercise.
Or maybe that's something we look at. We just, start chunking the policies and review them periodically and update what's needed, and, or CSBA puts it out. Okay,
Thank you.
That's all.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Erin.
No, thanks for doing that.
Any other comments before we adjourn back to closed session?
Just real quick, between the three of us, and I'm sure Julio, I mean, can we see about the time and the date for the special meeting then, Ellen, for the move on that property?
What is everyone's schedule Friday?
Oh, it can't be Aaron, huh?
Yeah,
Oh,
Aaron's
shoot.
out.
Yeah. We'll need to.
It's really, Julio, which is
Yeah.
either morning, I think sometimes lunch might work for him, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. But
Okay. But you'll just contact us and then we can.
Yeah, let's
put
do
them-
it.
yeah, are you
Okay.
two
Let's do it,
flexible?
let's do it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Maybe John could participate.
Oh, there you go,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, this time we will adjourn back into closed session at 8:28. Thank you.
Just a little quick there, going back to the data there that we're going back, just had a few minutes here as everyone was going through the reports. On page 17.
Hold on, Dave.
We've adjourned back into closed session.
Yeah, so she need to shut up,
Yeah.
she need to shut us off.
So then we need to discuss and then we'll report back out in open session. So we've adjourned back into closed session. So we need to, shut down and then we can discuss.
Do we, close the meeting? Are you off
Yes.
the Zoom?
Well,
Does
she
it
closes
shut down
it.
automatically?
Lassie closes it, right?
Okay.
Live stream?
And the streaming?
Yeah.
Well, I'll just leave it on, and it'll just be a screen once everyone else goes out that shows my name.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we all need to leave the public session
Okay.
meeting,
Yes.
turn off the speaker,
I'll name it.
everyone will
Okay.
leave and we will continue with closed session.
And you don't need us for any
Is that thing on?
No, we're just gonna use computer audio.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good.
So, we will reconvene to open session at 9 o'clock. The board met again in closed session but did not take action. And we will adjourn the meeting at 9 o'clock. Good night, everyone.
Good night.